We could talk some more this week about Kristi Noem's dog, but gosh, I want to hear more about Kim Jong-un. Welcome to MOMocrats MOMochat, part of the Demcast family of podcasts. I'm Donna Schwartz Mills with Karoli from crooksandliars.com. Eliza is off today. And this week, man, I'll tell you, this was the first time in a long time I actually had to turn the news off for a day and just completely disengage.
I understand totally. I feel the same way about social media. I mean,
Yeah, I did
the
that too.
social media is like at this point it's destroyed for me mostly. Unless I lurk on Reddit. That's pretty much all I do, and I do that because nobody knows me there. So and I can pick my topics. I don't have to keep seeing the same crap in my timeline over and over again. So and it's my job to watch social media, and it's my job to watch television. But what, I had a physical this week, and I actually talked them into lowering my blood pressure medication a little
Oh,
bit. So
let's keep that up. That's working for you.
exactly. So, but yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's just been the week from hell. I mean, even the Kristi Noem story was awful. Like, and,
well,
and it was late
because
night hosts were doing it for like 2 days. Colbert went 3, I think, on it. And it's
because it
like,
was just so awful.
it is
Never
awful.
mind the fact that she says this is what she did to poor Cricket. Um, just I mean, she even lost Janine Pirro, you know?
I know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, but on both sides of the spectrum, nobody liked what she did. And the thing is, like, why would you even put that in? I don't want to talk about the dog that much more, but I would like to say that it is a little weird to me that you would even put that story in your book and then like defend it by saying, I had to make the tough choices, blah, blah, blah. And we were just talking before we went on the air and saying, Trump loves Kim Jong Un and he
Right,
doesn't like dogs.
right.
So maybe this is her way of sucking up to Donald.
Have you seen those photos of her from before she was governor and before she got all Trumpy?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but
The
like
woman's had a
every,
complete
I don't,
makeover.
I honestly don't understand women that do this. I really don't. I mean, like Kim Guilfoyle, have you seen before and after pictures of her?
She was beautiful when she was married to Gavin Newsom.
Yes, she was. She was indeed. And then I don't know, she decided to do fillers and Trump stuff, and slutty outfits. And
Well,
I'm not.
have you seen the one that shows Melania and all the other women in his life? All the other brunettes the Hope Hicks, they all look alike. The Alina Habas, you
I-
know?
Now that you mention it, yeah, I can see that. It's wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
So,
is it is strange.
and Chrissy Nome, I think it's pretty much, I mean, maybe she did that to suck up to Trump, but it's not going to work for the VP. Now I just saw this before I booted up here to go on the air with you. We have Mike Flynn going, "Oh, yeah, well, I would agree to be vice president if he asks me." And I'm like, "Oh, please God, no." I mean,
Oh,
I couldn't take 3 months of that. I mean,
I saw some bad Mike Flynn stuff the other day.
there's some really bad Mike Flynn stuff out there.
And the minute his name pops up, him or Bannon, it's just bad.
Mhm. Well, this was him telling Steve Bannon he would be happy to be vice president. It
Of
was
course
it
he
was
would.
pretty gross. So yeah, and I mean, vice president of what? If this trial in New York succeeds, right, and he's convicted, he's not going to be president of anything. I don't think a
Let
convicted
us
felon.
pray. Let us pray. The last couple of days while they are talking about that period of the election when the Access Hollywood tape came out, and I am remembering how I just said, "Well, he is toast." And I remember how all the Republicans were abandoning him, And, it made the shock of what actually happened that much more of a gut punch, you
Yeah.
know?
No, it did. Absolutely it
Because
did.
that election day, I was happy, I was excited. Hillary was gonna be president, you
Right?
know, we were gonna fill that Scalia opening
See,
despite what Mitch
we
did.
were gonna save Obamacare from
Yeah,
the dreaded repeals, with
uh-huh.
all the things, and we did save Obamacare. Well, actually, John McCain did,
John McCain, may
but
rest in peace.
yeah, exactly. But I remember putting on a pantsuit for that day, right? Like
Yeah,
it, it, it was horrifying.
yeah,
That night was horrifying. I
yeah.
never want to relive a night like that ever. It was just awful.
I
And
had champagne ready.
I
I had
know.
gone up to Sacramento on business that day, and I was listening to MSNBC in the car on the drive up the 5, you know, and
Mhm.
the reports from all the exit polls and everything. It was gonna be great, and I went to my father's place with my sister. It was when my dad was still okay,
Mhm.
and we had champagne, and we ended up opening up whiskey instead,
Yeah.
you know?
It was horrible.
It was.
It was awful, and so I don't take anything for granted, but
No.
I do think that if he is a convicted felon, that there will be people that at least stay home. He'll have his base.
God, I
And
hope.
and Aaron
Base is
Rupar
only
said some
30%, you
yeah.
know?
Aaron Rupar said something today that really hit home with me. He said, Trump's Trump's maxed out. He'll be maxed out at 47%. The only issue is going to be the only way he wins is if the Democratic coalition fractures.
And this is why what's happening on the college campuses is so deeply, deeply disturbing.
It is deeply
I
disturbing.
got into some social media arguments this week because people were saying that in 1968, the reason Nixon won was Vietnam. And I was saying, no, there were multiple things going on. It's more complicated than that. It wasn't as simple as
The
Vietnam.
campus protests were a lot of it. I mean,
It was a lot of
the
it. And
chaos in the country in 1968 was the year
yeah,
when RFK was assassinated, Martin Luther King was assassinated. There were riots on campuses. There were riots in the streets of cities. It was chaos, and yes, Nixon won on his law and order.
right. Which I
Uh,
know is a racist dog whistle,
Absolutely
but at the same time, it was against these spoiled kids. And I know that my views of it are filtered through the discussions my mom and dad had in the front seat of the car while I was in the back seat of the car.
right,
But
of course.
I don't remember anyone in my family being as concerned about Vietnam as they were about the protests against Vietnam.
Well, and the concern about Vietnam was the draft.
Right.
And so for me, part of what frustrates me right now about these campus protests is that they're not saving one person in Gaza with this stuff. They're allowed to protest, and I'm not saying that they can't. But the problem is they're inviting exactly what's happening now, and that is by I don't want to generalize, but I do want to
Yeah.
say
Because
that
I do believe that many, if not most, of the young people
mhm.
participating in this are motivated by real compassion
Oh, I
for
do too.
people who they see in dire distress. And
I agree that, but again, that and calling for divestment and all of that is great, but even if it happened, even if Biden said, okay, fine, we'll just divest everything in Israel, which you would not do, by the way,
no, because he
but
can't.
yeah, I mean, assuming, just let's play it out for a second,
Yeah,
right? It's not going to happen like that. It's not going to end any wars.
right.
And so this is the issue I have, is that they've left themselves open now for attacks by the extreme right wing people. And I've already
Mhm.
heard about Oath Keepers, and I've heard about Proud Boys and Three Percenters
Yeah.
going into these campuses and attacking them, and that
Ugh.
and stirring the violence. And then unfortunately the administrators have no choice but to call in the police.
Well, and that's what's been happening.
Right.
That is what's been happening. And, I was rereading an account today that looked at the history of this, beginning with Elise Stefanik and the December grilling
Hmm.
of campus presidents. And I try to put myself in the seat of these campus presidents who are trying to walk the very fine line
Right.
of allowing free speech, protecting the factions of students,
Hmm.
making the Jewish students feel safe, fighting the Islamophobia.
Right.
Um, it's a thankless
It's a
job.
mess. It's a
It's
mess.
a thankless job.
You're not going to win. I mean,
No,
you're not any
nobody's
more
going to
than
want
you're
to be
going to
at
win an
University
argument on
Press.
social media about this. I mean,
Yeah,
this is what, and I just see so much, like generalization and sort of the sloganism, sloganeering,
yeah.
genocide, 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 without any. It's all
Understanding of what
what
they're
what is going
actually
on and what
saying.
the complexities. And if you say, as I have, that it is possible to to start, if you for moral clarity, for me it starts with the fact that the ceasefire that was in place was broken by Hamas, and Hamas is still responsible for what's going on today. But so don't talk to me about not funding genocide and so on and so forth until you are ready to understand that what Hamas wants is an eradication. They want a genocide too. Right. And so that's what makes this conflict so intractable. And
Yeah.
it is possible to absolutely loathe what Bibi is doing and the violence that he's bringing down on innocent people. But at the same time, again, and if Lisa were here, she'd probably say it better than I am.
Oh, she would.
Um, you know, again, it is Hamas that they should be getting rid of. I
And
mean,
instead,
Palestinians should be getting rid
instead,
of.
they are displaying Hamas banners.
Right.
They are repeating Hamas propaganda.
Hmm. Right.
And and there is definitely anti-Semitic material being passed around, and of course the Jewish students feel threatened.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course they do, for sure, because they are threatened. So of course they feel threatened. And to make it worse, you have these extreme right wingers now who are coming in and on behalf of the, Israel. I guess they say pro Israel. I just think they're violent shit
No,
disturbers. I don't think
no.
they're pro anything other than
They're
themselves.
pro-Israel only because they want the apocalypse to happen and to bring in the second coming.
Right.
That's all they care about.
Right. So the problem is, and this is the problem that I've had just even in my attitude about this, is that I want, I mean, campus protests are something that is as much a part of the college experience as anything else, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't not go to college without a protest somewhere, right? I mean,
Except when by the time I got to college and that era was done and everybody was buttoned down and taking business classes, and the only time people came out en masse at
mhm.
Cal State Northridge in the mid 70s was because there were going to be some streakers coming through.
Well, I went
That
there
was
when
the
Jimmy
only
Carter
time.
came to campaign on CSUN's campus, and said there was quite a few people then, but they weren't protesting. But there's always a few protesters around about something. I
Look,
mean,
we did those women's marches. There's
yes,
something fantastic to feel like you're part of something, part of a cause,
making a
fighting back
statement.
against the oppressors.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah, I do too. And
I
even
totally
the
get that.
encampments I was okay with. What I started when I started to not be okay was when they started taking over buildings.
Yeah. When they started breaking windows.
Mm-hmm.
When they started breaking windows and making demands,
Yep.
send us food. It's humanitarian.
Yeah, I know. So, that I want to read something that let me read it. This is Jonathan Last, who I don't always agree with, but I think in
No,
this case
no.
he's right.
He's probably the most liberal person at the Bulwark, which is
Yeah,
not a liberal publication, but
at all.
but
Right.
they care about this country, and so I read them. They're thoughtful conservatives, you know.
Right. So if you are a privileged Ivy League student, let me promise you that your protests will not save a single life in Gaza. You know what you should do if you want to help. Raise money for Doctors Without Borders, which has teams on the ground in Gaza giving medical care, or give to the group ANERA, which is getting food and supplies into Gaza as quickly as possible, or to our friends at World Central Kitchen. And I agree with that. I mean, I think that if you want to, march and then raise the money. It's the same thing that I said about the women's march. I said,
Yeah,
let's march and then let's get out there and make sure
right,
that people vote and,
right.
that we're giving and stuff like that. And this is the same thing.
It is the same. It is the same, but you know, I thought that President Biden's statement yesterday was very good.
I did too.
And what I've got in our notes is actually the
Hmm.
distilled part that he tweeted out,
Yeah.
where he said, "In moments of dissent, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics. This is a moment for clarity. So let me be clear. Peaceful protest is protected in America. Violent protest is not protected. That's against the law."
Right. And I thought that was exactly the right thing to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I see a lot of stuff online, from people saying, well, Biden is going to lose because of this and so on. I don't think so. I think,
Gaza is not polling high among the concerns of young people.
I mean, it is a
Young
concern.
people are concerned mostly about the same things the rest of us are. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about inflation. They're concerned about
Climate change.
climate change, definitely concerned about climate change,
Yeah.
concerned about,
Housing.
housing.
Yeah.
These are the problems we still have to tackle,
Right.
you know? And this is what we need a second Biden term to do, because he's laid the groundwork for us to get things done. And it's the most frustrating thing when we change hands every 4 to 8 years and they go, "Oh, we're tired of this," and you don't get to finish the job, you
Right.
know
Right.
and we see it every time. The economy plummets. They
Hmm.
elect a Democrat, the Democrat fixes it, and
Hmm.
then they go, "Oh, well, Republicans are better for the economy. Let's elect a Republican." And
Yeah.
it's just like,
Right.
what?
I know. Well, and to that end, so I don't know if you've been following our site at all, but we've had a series on Project 2025 going
God,
on,
the
and
nightmare, that the
it is a
dystopian
nightmare,
nightmare.
but it doesn't have to happen, right? I mean,
Right.
we can end that, we can abort that before it ever becomes a fetus. I'm sorry, that was bad. But
See, I'm afraid that all we do is put it off.
well, I mean, look, this is the Republican agenda.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's not pretend this is Trump. In fact,
No. No,
if
Trump is just a useful idiot for them.
so, and if you don't believe that, go read the transcripts of the Time interview with him, where he just literally is insane. He rattles off the like talking points and bullshit that he's been fed, and he doesn't have any sense of policy. He doesn't have any he is exactly that, a useful idiot. And what has happened, I mean, it occurred to me when I was reading these transcripts that what's happened is he's so weak that the Nazis have essentially, he's their puppet.
Yeah.
right? And the Nazis are going to take over this country if he gets elected.
Well,
So
he picks Mike Flynn as vice president, and then oops, Trump gets assassinated.
right, exactly. I mean,
And then
all of
we
those
end up
things are
with King
possible.
Mike Flynn.
Right. I mean, all of these things are possible. So it's not an exaggeration. None
No,
of it. And if you have not read that transcript, don't read the article. The article
the
sanitized.
article was bad
The
enough.
article was bad, but it sanitized how bad those interviews were. When you read the transcript, you just like, oh my God, you can't let this guy near any power ever, or the
We
Republicans.
knew, but it's just,
I mean, it's not just him; it's the
yeah,
Republicans too. They
yeah,
can't get near power. They just can't
no,
because they're
no,
yeah.
because they have
So
decided that democracy doesn't work for them because, oh, what they want to do is not popular.
right,
Imagine that.
I know, amazing, isn't it? So it's that time transcript. Just like I was literally freaked out for a day over that. I mean, I still am, but that day
It
was
came out
especially
on the day that was my moratorium from all news and social media that I needed,
lucky
my
you.
mental health day that I took in the middle of the week.
Yeah, well,
And
that was a good choice on
I
your
think
part
so.
because I mean, honestly, the university protests have destroyed social media for me. I just can't do it.
Well,
I can't go on there and make a statement that's pretty innocuous, right? I don't go out there and slam these kids for
no.
protesting or any of that. I just make the statement that, it's nice, it would be good to remember where this began on October 7th and who began it. And, yes, they're winning the PR war because you guys are letting them win the PR war,
Well,
you know?
I do think that once again, there have been active measures that
Oh,
have
yeah.
taken
You
place
think?
for years on our
Mhm.
college campuses that,
I read an article in the Daily Beast this week that talked about the Qatari
I
donations.
saw that.
That
Yeah,
was disturbing.
yeah.
And when I mentioned something about it, I got slammed, from some total stranger who doesn't know me from Adam, right? And it just slammed me for, that doesn't make any sense, of course it's not them, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I just block and move on. But it's like,
Oh,
what's the point of even talking about it on social media? Seriously, because everybody is irrational about it. It reminds me of the public option and
yes,
back in the day and
yes.
how everybody had a side and it was so the hyperbolic, all of it, it was like, we don't have the public option, we don't have anything. And I just
Well,
can't do that.
it's the same as in 2016, you know,
Mhm.
Hillary Clinton wasn't Bernie, so
No,
we're
right.
just gonna take our ball and play somewhere else.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen this time. I mean, there may be a small portion of them that do that, but I think for the most part, like you said earlier, people have other concerns, more pressing concerns, and Trump is a clown.
Trump is a clown who is now, not happy about RFK.
Like, that's because RFK is sucking more votes off him. And I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but by the way, have you noticed that when there's a few positive polls for Biden out, suddenly they're not anymore? It's like
Yep.
we last week we had positive polls for Biden. This week Biden's in the tank. I mean,
Well, Carolee, I think that if you've been following the Trump trial and what happened every time one of Trump's adversaries had a good week in the polls, and then all of a sudden the media, the National Enquirer, would run
mhm,
a slam story on whoever was up
yep.
that week, you know, I'm not saying that there's been hush money paid to anybody, but the New York Times is definitely in the tank for the Republicans.
Holy crap. Did you see the headline on one of their opinion pieces yesterday?
Oh yeah,
It
that one.
the lawless
Yeah,
Trump is lawless, but it's for a good cause or something
yes.
like that.
I'm like,
I was like,
who
what
is
are you
this
saying?
guy? I'm like, what the that was the most gaslighting. And I posted that. I said, this has got to be the most WTF headline ever written,
Right?
in as a gaslight,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like, I
If you
actually,
bothered to read it, the headline was just like, oh my God,
I saw the screenshot on Twitter and I literally had to go to the New York Times and see it
to
for
see if it was
myself.
real.
Yeah.
Because now that Ben Collins is in charge of the Onion is doing things.
He's got a real challenge ahead of him with that, because how do you make satire out of this
They're
stuff? I don't
doing
know.
it. They're doing it. The problem is it just all seems so real.
Exactly. It's like hard to tell what's real and what's not. But that headline was something else. And the New York Times forgot to put that he was also an editor for a conservative
Yeah.
institute. They only put
Yeah.
he'd started up some magazine or something. But,
Oh no,
um,
I Googled him. I Googled him entirely. Whenever I see something like that, it's like, okay, let's see what their agenda is.
yeah,
You know,
well, their
and
agenda appears to be the same as the New York Times, which
yeah.
is too bad. I mean, right now, food and puzzles are pretty much the only reason to subscribe.
And I'm there every day for the food and the puzzles, and
Yeah.
because those are good.
Yeah.
And it is amusing that that Joe Biden gave them the finger by going on Howard Stern, and that was a great interview.
So now they're ending all of their articles about Biden with a Biden, won't sit down with any legitimate publication, but he'll go on with Howard Stern, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, wow, you guys aren't bitter or anything, are you? If I were Joe Biden, I would put New York Times in the same bucket as Fox News. I
I
wouldn't
think he
go,
has.
and I wouldn't give them an interview either.
Yeah.
It's not so much that you need a friendly interview. You don't.
No,
It,
they just
they
need to
don't.
be
They're
fair.
exactly. They're not fair. They're biased, right?
Yeah.
Like I've never seen before. I used to remember getting the New York Times when it was still just a print thing, and I'd like pay the $3 on Sundays or whatever it was to
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
And it was like a pleasure to read because it was
When
so.
I worked at the Tonight Show, we got the New York Times every day.
Yeah,
And, I was a daily reader of the New York Times, and I did the crossword puzzle in ink. And
braggart.
I didn't always get it, but I would do it.
Yeah,
And when I went to journalism classes, that was the Cadillac. That was the standard,
right.
you know?
Yeah, and now it's not, for
No.
whatever, and I guess that, the publisher is the one that's
Yeah.
turned on. He's pissed off,
It's
so
angry.
he's just gonna be an asshole about the whole thing. So whatever. I mean, I agree with Biden. I think he should do. And by the way, I liked his remarks at the correspondence dinner with regard to that too. I mean, we can talk about whether the correspondence dinner is something that should happen, but it did happen, and I liked what he said about the New York Times.
I'm old. I like traditions. I think, I know that I I think it's fun that once a year the politicians and the reporters and the journalists can poke fun at one another. I think that it beckons back to a time when things weren't so vitriolic all the time.
Yeah.
I
Well,
remember again when I worked at the Tonight Show, my boss used to write jokes for those things to give to Reagan and Bush, and I used to have to type those up,
yeah.
and it just seemed fun. And then he would go for the gridiron. He'd come back and he'd say, "Yeah, Reagan Reagan nailed it, and it's a good thing George Bush has a day job. He'd never make it as a stand-up."
Oh my goodness. Well,
I digress.
yeah. I mean, it was a fun we were actually on our way to a concert at CSUN, so I had to watch on my phone. Like, I just caught Biden's remarks when we got there, so that was pretty much it. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah,
Let's go
we
back.
digress.
Going back to, but as long as we're on the topic of Biden, we could talk about like some of the good things that he and Kamala Harris are doing. Like, for example, expanding the Affordable Care Act to cover DACA recipients.
Isn't that good?
It is good.
I can see the Proud Boys and the MAGA people just, I don't want my tax dollars going to illegals and
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
I didn't want my tax dollars going to Iraq either, but they
right,
did. So live with it.
right,
Get over it. It is what it is.
right. And I don't want to subsidize corporations who don't pay their fair share of taxes.
Yeah. But we still make our pet tax checks out every year and we still
Yeah,
send them in. So,
that's right.
get over it and be a law abiding citizen and pay your taxes like everybody else.
Yeah.
And
No, you had me subscribe to Hopium.
yeah.
We talked about a month ago, and
Mhm.
I really do love the fact that every day he hammers in the very important message
Yes.
that Joe Biden is a good president. The country is better off today.
Yes.
And there's a great deal of data to suggest that Americans are not as down on the economy and Biden as these polls say.
Right?
He had a rundown today on the economic record because, this morning they had a jobs report. And the New York Times is like, oh, this is so disappointing. We only added 175,000 jobs and, unemployment's ticked up to 3.9%. And, the Guardian at the same time was saying, the US economy is still doing great. They've added these jobs. It's slowed down a little, but this is what, the measures that the Fed was doing was supposed to do.
Mhm.
The unemployment rate is still under 4%. It's the longest period of time that they've had unemployment under 4% in 50 years, 60
Mhm.
years. And this rundown is just amazing. The best economic recovery from COVID in the whole G7. The Wall Street Journal calls the US economy the envy of the world. GDP growth averaged over 3%
Mhm.
in the 4 years of Biden's presidency. That's 3 times higher than Trump averaged each year.
Yeah.
Um, Inflation has fallen dramatically.
Yeah.
The prices of many goods, including food items, continue to fall. I'd like to point out that OPEC is raising oil prices again. That is not a Biden thing. And we learned, I think yesterday, the FTC has evidence of price fixing among the oil companies
Yep.
to keep oil scarce and to keep the price high.
Yep.
That's not Biden. Yell at Shell Oil, yell at Chevron for that.
Right.
Um, we've got wage gains, new business starts, prime age worker participation rate. There's 1.3 job openings per unemployed person, the lowest uninsured rate in history. ACA signups were the highest ever this year.
Mhm.
The deficit is trillions of dollars lower today than it was when Trump was in the White House. And, let's
In
not
spite of
forget
his
how
stupid
much.
tax cuts.
Right, right. Median wealth up 37% from 2020 to 2022. And the median wealth for 18 to 34-year-olds in this period is doubled.
Excellent.
Joe Biden has erased more than $130 billion in student debt.
Mhm.
Home ownership rates for Gen Z are way above millennials and Gen X at this point in their lives. They say that a lot of that is due to some of these Gen Z kids, younger people, not kids, bought homes before the interest rates went up. Interest rates were at historic lows, you know,
Mhm.
before everything ratcheted
Well,
up.
and
Yeah.
also one of the reasons the markets are happy with the jobs report is
Yeah.
because they're now anticipating a rate cut.
Right. So today they had a good day.
Yeah.
But, they're ghoulish.
They are ghoulish. It always blows my mind that you get some positive economic report and the markets go in the tank. It's just like, what?
You know, Trump is still talking about how when he becomes president, he is going to drill, drill, drill. But the truth is that domestic oil production set records last year. And at the same time, we're setting records with renewable energy production too. We are more energy independent than we've been in decades, and that's only going to get better.
Did you hear that California sometimes with their solar energy actually zeroes out the grid and sends it
Yes,
to the negative?
yes.
I
And,
want.
and that keeps getting framed by the media as a problem.
It's not a problem. I just want solar with batteries. That's all.
It's the transition to renewables was never going to be smooth.
Mhm.
You know,
Of course not.
the transition to electric vehicles was never going to be smooth.
Right.
Things like that happen in fits and starts, you
Right.
know, and it's disconcerting. I'm not real happy that Musk has gotten rid of the entire charging unit. Um, do you hear that? You hear
No, I missed
that?
that. Oh, the
Fired all the
all the
people,
employees. I
all
did.
the
I did hear that.
employees that make, you know, and it was like the day after Newsom made this big announcement about how, you'll be able to use Tesla chargers no matter what kind of car you drive. I'm not happy about this. I think
I
we're fine in California. We have enough. But
Yeah.
those charging stations are the most reliable and the best.
Well, I mean, they're going to facilitate. Without the infrastructure, people aren't going to adopt
Right. Right.
electric vehicles. So
That's right. We need
they
more
need
of the
more
infrastructure.
infrastructure. Yeah.
Now, the government is embarking on creating more infrastructure in other parts of the state,
Right.
but it's going to take a while to
It
be able to
it all
use.
takes time. I mean, how long have we wanted high-speed rail? And we finally in California had the groundbreaking for high-speed rail to Las Vegas.
Gareth, as a geologist, worked on a high-speed rail project 30
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
It,
Wow.
it it never got made,
Yeah, of course not. But
but
this one it's
he,
going to
he
happen.
did he did the geology for it 30
Yeah.
years ago.
Wow.
No, this is exciting. I mean,
Mhm.
I never go to Vegas, but it's
But I
it's a
might. I mean, if I could go on a fast train, I might go and come back the same day. I don't know. You
I've
know?
taken the high-speed rail in Italy, and it's a pleasure.
Mhm.
It is
I
a
wanna go.
pleasure to go by rail.
I wanna go. Yeah. Well, I mean, those anyway, back to the these are the things that Joe Biden needs 4 more years to actually finish. That
Yeah,
like and obviously like
and
the
dare I
high-speed
say,
rail
give
is not
Kamala
going to be finished by
give
then.
Kamala 4 more years after that.
Yeah. Maybe 8 more. I don't know. I mean,
You
we'd have
know,
to see.
we have
So,
it took 12 years for the Reagan Revolution to set us down the trickle-down path. We need our 12 years.
we do. And they're gonna do everything they can to prevent that,
Of course they will.
which is why I come back to where we started, which is the coalition of Democrats has to hold together. We have to make this happen, and that means that leadership on all levels have to figure out that this is what we need to have to survive. I mean, I kid you not, the plans Republicans have for us are not meant to prosper us and give us a future.
No.
They're meant to put a lot of money in rich people's pockets, and that's pretty much it.
Well,
And
no, they're also meant to keep women down,
right.
and they're meant to make us shut up. The
Okay.
leak.
This week is the anniversary of the leak of the Dobbs decision.
Ugh. It's another one I remember where we were.
Yeah, exactly. How can you forget, right? I mean, and then figuring out, is it real? Is it not real? Who leaked it? What was
Will it be the prevailing decision? Will it
right,
be it was just one opinion. We didn't
right.
know.
Of course, now we realize that it was, I mean, I would be willing to bet,
Alito
the
leaked it on
farm on
purpose.
Alito, yeah,
Yeah.
for that. Speaking of whom, I mean, I listened to all of those Supreme Court arguments the last week of them, and again, and the immunity one, and he is just an awful person. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. He is an awful, awful, awful person.
Yeah.
And so is Clarence Thomas. It's kind of a non sequitur, but I had to throw that in. So anyway, yes, this is the week of the anniversary of the Dobbs leak, and Kamala Harris in particular, but also Biden, have been really hammering on it. Of course, you wouldn't know it because nobody really does much reporting on what they do, but they have been,
Yeah.
and a lot of time in Florida, which is where I think they expect to contend in Florida and North Carolina, in addition to the other states that they're in.
Oh
So,
gosh, I don't know how I'm going to handle the next 6 months.
you know, we're just going to have therapy sessions
I
every
think so.
Friday.
I think we're gonna have to go back to mixing cocktails when we do
Yes.
this show so we can relax a little. I mean, I swear, again, Wednesday morning when I woke up and saw the news about the cops coming in overnight to break things up at UCLA,
Oh,
and the previous night the cops had come in to break up what was happening in Columbia.
right.
And everybody's saying, well, gosh, it's just like 1968, the last time that
It's not.
Democrats were in Chicago, you know?
I know, I've heard that a lot. And actually, I'm kind of, in some respects, I'm sort of glad that things are heating up now in May. And, possibly poor Antony Blinken has been working his ass off to
Oh my
try to
God.
get them what they want, right? Which is a ceasefire. That's what they want. He wants it too.
He's starting to look as old as Biden.
Oh yeah, I know. He's I don't know how he's doing it, but he's doing it. So I I mean, it would be nice. We have to know that Netanyahu wants Trump. So he's not going to
Yeah,
cooperate. In fact, I heard that, he won't accept any ceasefire where he has to end the war. I don't know what that means. I
I
mean, if
don't
you have a
either.
ceasefire, you can keep the war going, you can't shoot. Isn't that pretty much how it works? I
He
mean,
wants to reserve the right
mhm,
to go into Rafah and decimate what's
right.
left of
And
that land.
Biden is saying, don't do it.
Right.
So there's all these things that are going on, and nobody's really telling anybody about them, right? Because we're all obsessing over the Trump trial, or what stupid things he said, or Project 2025, all of which are important. But it is important to remember that Biden and Blinken are working as hard as they can to make this, to de-escalate this,
Right.
and get some aid into Gaza for the Palestinians. And that
Even
isn't
if Hamas
that isn't
steals the aid.
right. That was my next point,
Yeah.
that is actually going to get to the Gazans, right? And that Israel, and Netanyahu are at least neutralized for the election. And by neutralized, I don't mean in prison or something. I mean, that they're not stirring up shit like they are right now.
Yeah. I just,
But it's not 1968. Any way
no,
you
but
look at it,
but
it's not
Carolee,
1968.
I was at the convention in 2008,
Hmm.
and there were anarchists,
Hmm.
and I got caught up in a an anarchist rebellion that was happening, and
That's
live
kind of
tweeted it.
scary.
I live tweeted it. All
I
of the
think I
MOMocrats
remember
taught
that.
me that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
there were all these cops in riot gear, and they were ready for them and everything. And the thing is that we talked to one of them and said, "Are you going to do this at the Republican convention?" They said no.
Of course not.
So they do it at ours,
Hmm.
and it didn't even get covered in 2008.
Hmm.
All right. What do you think happens in Chicago, even if it's just a tiny little faction of anarchists?
Well, there were anarchists in 2012
Yeah,
and 2016 too.
yeah.
At
So they show up
they show up at
regardless.
every Democratic convention
Right, right,
and everything. And yes, there will be, but again, it's not 1968. We're not protesting the draft, which was one of the key issues. It wasn't Vietnam. It was sending those kids over there to die that
right.
was the subject of the protest. And I would have been right in front of that.
Yeah.
So,
I told you, that's where I see students protest and it's like, yeah,
mhm,
that was,
yeah,
that's where my heart was in 1968 with the kids.
exactly. So, yes, anarchists will probably show up and Chicago police will be prepared. And Fox News will make a big deal out of the fact that Chicago is such a hotbed of crime, and everything else. And yet I am optimistic that and we'll have, by the way, we
There'll
will
be
have
Gaza
protesters.
protests.
There will be
There
protesters
will be
inside.
Gaza protests.
I mean, there will be delegates there who will be there and will protest Gaza. No question about it. Just like they did with Bernie, but I still think it'll be a good convention. And there's a lot of
God, I hope
Democrats.
so. God, I
Yeah,
hope so.
I do too. I
Chicago's
mean,
a wonderful city.
yeah. And it's got a great governor in Illinois
That's
in
true. Pritzker
right
is
now.
wonderful.
Right. And I think the mayor's pretty good now too, right? I
He's
mean,
no Mayor Daley.
exactly. So, I mean, you want to think there's been lessons learned, I guess.
I
You
hope.
want to hope there's been lessons
I
learned.
hope.
Yeah.
You know, it's
So,
it's I worry about us learning lessons because it seems like we keep repeating the same mistakes.
well, the my biggest worry is the active measures.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that doesn't get covered. Like, where are the journalists covering that? Right, in relation to these campus protests, there I read one article that was just the one in the Daily Beast about the Qatar,
Hmm.
uh, donations, but there's surely more.
And that
There's
was so
sure,
under the radar that only you and I, who read the Daily Beast, uh,
right,
saw that.
yeah,
It didn't get picked up by anyone else.
right. No, it didn't. So, and where are the journals? I actually, I think I put this out on all four platforms, social media, basically saying, you know, why doesn't a journalist actually investigate who is coming in and disturbing? I mean, don't just assume they're pro-Israel people, right? You can't assume that at all. But and yet that's how it's getting reported. Where are the reporters actually trying to figure out who these people are and what their motivation is for doing it? Because again, I mean, they're rumors, but they're pretty strong rumors that they're Proud Boys, Three Percenters,
Oh,
Oath
just like
Keepers.
Black Lives Matter.
Exactly. Bingo. Kyle Rittenhouse and all of his, wannabes are there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Ugh,
So, I mean, those are the
terrifying.
things. Yeah. I mean, but reporters have a role to play here. They need to be playing it. And let's not have it come out like next year
Right.
because
In a book.
it's too late. By next year, if it comes out, it's too late. Nobody's going to pay attention to it. Nobody will follow it. Nobody cares anymore. And we haven't even gotten to like the most dystopian people on the planet, which are the billionaires up in Silicon Valley. I don't know if you guys read their
The little dinner, my dinner with Elon.
my dinner with Mark Andreessen. I
Yeah,
think it was right,
yeah.
and it was Rick Perlstein wrote it, and it
It
was
was it was like a who's who of evil billionaires.
right. It honestly read to me that way. Like
Yeah.
I'm
It was
reading
like
this
out of
and
a
I'm
comic
thinking,
book,
they're how can we get them? How can we get them? I mean, it was really awful.
Yeah.
And I think they invited Pearlstein as a toy, like somebody they could just play with their interesting little stupid ideas. And I mean, part of me wants to say, Rhett, you guys go buy an island somewhere And then I
I
think, no.
wish they would. Did
Yeah,
you
except
read about that Andreessen protege
he did.
who, talking about, the people wearing the gray shirts, and
Yes.
we'll have a little nod with one another, and we're
Yeah,
gonna turn San Francisco into, like, our own little playground,
right.
and
We're gonna ethnically cleanse it or something. I mean, it was
yeah.
just really sickening. It was really awful. Yes, I did. I did read that, and I thought, these are, I mean, Trump is just a useful idiot. These guys over here, these are the real mass bandits. They're the ones that really want to plunge this country into dystopian nightmare, so that they can what? Get more money. That's all.
So they can be on top.
I mean, the fact that you created Netscape, Mark Andreessen, and funded a lot of other tech stuff doesn't give you the right to own everybody in the country.
Well, there's money must be quite a drug.
Well, I'm sure. I don't know. I'll have to tell
Because
you if I ever get there.
because these people just seem to abandon all. I mean, Nicole Shanahan's? I mean,
She is really a piece of work. I mean, everything I see about her is just
did you see
insane.
her what she was saying about, a teenager who gets raped and pregnant, and, the baby is a blessing, and this is like the running mate of a Kennedy?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, he's the entire Kennedy family has endorsed Joe Biden,
I know that.
with the exception of this guy, right? He is
Yeah,
definitely the outcast and the black sheep of the Kennedy family. And
yeah.
honestly, I think he's got a problem. I mean, a mental problem.
I expect that losing so many family members so young, the way that he did,
Absolutely could have been,
and he looks like
catalyst.
his father. He's got his father's name, and he looks like his father.
Yeah, he does. But he acts nothing like his father.
Nothing like his father.
I mean, it's really too bad.
Yeah.
So so anyway, oh, should we talk about our black sheep in the Democratic Party? Henry Cuellar is,
Well, he, along with Menendez now, both are credibly accused of corruption. And he was never our favorite Democrat, but he does
I'm
win
so
elections.
frustrated because Jessica Cisneros was 200 votes away
Yeah,
from winning that primary, and
yeah,
he could have been corrupt and we wouldn't have to own him anymore. But now it's going to be a real pain in the ass to try to win that seat down there.
yeah.
And in fact, I don't think we will. I think we'll
No,
lose it unless something happens in Texas and people come out to vote. I don't know. We'll see.
well,
But
I think
I mean, I put him in the same bin as Menendez, and they should
yeah,
absolutely be indicted, and they should absolutely leave office if they're committing criminal acts and
yeah,
abusing the power of their office. They should go.
they
They
should
should
go.
be, yeah.
They should
So
go. So,
bye
I
bye.
yeah.
And then Hope Hicks testified today at the Trump trial.
And apparently it was quite dramatic, and she
Yeah,
started sobbing on the stand and had to take a break.
yeah. And
And
nobody really knows why she started crying. My guess is that I mean, she gave some testimony that pretty much nails in the, you know, puts
yeah,
the nails in the coffin. I have to say that there's a part of me that's cynical and feels like no matter how much they nail down this case, somebody on the jury will acquit him and he'll get, I mean,
well,
he just gets away with so
that's
much.
what the attorneys are going for. That's all they need is one
Well,
juror to
that's what any good
no,
defense attorney does, right? I mean, that's their job. Their
right,
job is to find that one juror and hope that they can plant enough reasonable doubt, or jury nullification. I mean,
right,
either one,
yeah.
right?
And those are very real risks.
Yep, they are.
And, at least though we did hear the term Donald von Schitzenpants.
I
that
couldn't
made my
believe they said that. I know, right?
apparently it did not get into the record. It was supposed to get into the record, and whoever recorded it
Didn't,
did
huh?
not put the exact words in there.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's still too funny. That's like
It was trending all day yesterday.
yeah, and today, and it's actually trending on Truth Social too,
Oh,
which
that's
is
great.
hilarious.
That is.
Oh, and speaking of Truth Social, today we found out that the auditors
Auditors
are
under
like
investigation.
they're under investigation. They cut a deal with the SEC that they will not practice before the SEC, and so
Unbelievable.
that no more auditing for them, right? At least not before the SEC.
Of
And
course,
it's just
every
not Truth
auditor
Social.
Trump uses is crooked,
Only the best people. I
right?
mean, only the best crooks. So yeah, I mean, these guys, like, without admitting guilt or innocence, said, okay, we won't do any more SEC audits, basically. So, but it affected 1,500 companies. We don't even know who they are,
Yeah,
right?
that's awful.
But assume they're public companies. I mean, yeah. So now they're banned, and not a moment too soon.
No,
It's crazy,
no.
absolutely crazy.
Crazy times, Karoli.
I know, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? We've gone through everything on our rundown. I say we call it a weekend.
Okay. Have you watched Ripley?
No, I have
Oh,
not.
you must. You must. I mean, it is so good. It's black and white. The cinematography is beautiful. It's set in Rome, and
Is it going to upset me?
well,
I'm at a point now where I can only see light comedies.
oh well, you won't want to watch it.
That's why I have not seen Ripley yet.
Oh, okay, it's a drama. It's a drama for
It's a
sure. But
drama, and, I've read the reviews, and everybody says it's wonderful, and I'm going, I don't think I can handle it
I
right
mean,
now.
there was an episode last night where like after I said that's it, that's all I can watch tonight.
There
We
we
have
go. Maybe when our reality is less dystopian, I can go back to watching dramas where people get sad, um, or killed or murdered.
yeah, that's pretty much this show in a
Yeah,
nutshell.
yeah. But I do like the hot priest.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, on that note,
Palm Royale is good too.
I Palm Royale is fun, and I
Yes.
really want to see the Fall Guy movie.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
See,
Okay, now.
light, light, fun stuff. On that note, um, that is our show for the week. Join us next time on YouTube, momocrats.buzzsprout.com, or on your favorite podcast service such as iTunes, Google, and Amazon Music. And be sure to check our Facebook page for updates. I'm Donna Schwartz Mills with Karoli, saying bye-bye for the MOMocrats.
Bye-bye.
MOMocrats MOMochat is part of the Demcast family of podcasts.